Top Pentagon officials test in a rare hearing on unidentified flying objects. What are they disclosing, and why are they refusing to say more? Let's take a look.
An observation in real time. There it was.
Unveiling clips of unexplainable floating objects, top Pentagon officials testified in the first public hearing on UFOs in more than half a century.
And is this one of the phenomena that we can't explain?
I do not have an explanation for what this specific object is.
Officials confirmed that most of the observed unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, were physical objects, but they offered little confirmation on what those objects actually are, or whether aliens really exist. Yet Scott Bray, Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, said sightings are frequent and continuing, and often occur in military training areas. When asked if U.S. aircraft have ever collided with these strange objects,
We haven't had a collision. We've had at least 11 near misses, though.
the Tuesday hearing follows a government report in 2021 that recorded 144 cases of UAPs since 2004, with all but one of them unresolved. Bray said among these cases there are
a small handful in which there are flight characteristics or signature management that we can't explain with the data that we have. We'll continue. Those are obviously the ones that are of most interest to us.
Lawmakers focused more on national security, expressing concerns that some phenomena could be foreign adversaries like China and Russia deploying breakthrough technology in American airspace.
UAPs are unexplained, it's true, but they are real. They need to be investigated, and many threats they pose need to be mitigated.
Bray said China has established its own version of the UAP task force and that the U.S. is sharing findings with certain countries. This prompted a warning from lawmakers.
Be careful who we share our data with, and don't necessarily trust some of the data we may get from someone else.
Pentagon officials also noted challenges in balancing between transparency and secrecy in this open hearing, which was followed by a closed-door session.
We do not want potential adversaries to know exactly what we're able to see or understand, or how we come to the conclusions we make.
While sparing other details in the open session, Bray said the number of reported UFO encounters had grown to about 400 since last year's report, thanks to a reduced stigma around the topic.
Congresswoman Michelle Steele represents California's 48th Congressional District. California's economy is the largest in the United States. We asked the Congresswoman how the Golden State has been coping with unprecedented inflation. We also had a chance to ask her about a recent action she's took with regard to discrimination against Asian Americans in the country's education system. Here's our interview. Congresswoman Michelle Steele, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me today.
Congresswoman, many experts are saying that inflation is or could be well beyond the 8.3% that we're hearing and that we're seeing. You're starting to see some very prominent Democrats, Jeff Bezos, criticizing Biden's policies in regard to these inflation numbers that we're seeing. What do you think this means for the Democratic Party?
You know what? I think they understand that this is going to be really hurting them. And we have an election coming up in this November, and they're the one created it. So we really have to get rid of it. But you know what? 8.3% of inflation means that, you know what? It's a hidden taxes. So when you go to the market, you feel actually much higher than that. Because I know I go to the market every week. I spend $120 worth of merchandise I used to get. Now that I pay about $180, it's almost like 30%. So it's a really big hit for not just, you know, low income, middle income. It hurts everybody out there. And then on the top of it, you have to think about the gas price. California just hit $6 per gallon, and some places that you go, like San Francisco and Sacramento, $9 per gallon. How these people can go out and, you know, work back and forth to their family. They have to support their family. And gas prices are high, inflation's high. I mean, how are they going to survive?
Congresswoman, there seems to be an unfortunate phenomenon that we're seeing throughout the country where Asian students are being discriminated against. You recently filed an amicus brief at the Supreme Court along with Senator Ted Cruz, revolving around some of these issues. Can you explain to us why you did that?
You know what? It's all race, because they try to accept the students by the race, not by the merit. And I've been seeing that. And even in California, 1996, we passed Proposition 209 to get rid of affirmative action. Actually, they came out really good because 4 years graduation rate used to be 31%. And after you got rid of affirmative action, and it went up to 55%. But these Ivy League schools or other, well-known universities, and they try to cut down the students, especially Asian Americans, and they are using personality traits to try to find that they're well respected or their likability. How you can find it without interviewing these kids, just reading their essays. That's the way it was. So Harvard University, actually, their average Asian American students' acceptance rate was always 18 to 20%. I even talked to Secretary Cardona, and he agreed all these children has to be accepted by merit, not by race. So you are actually using certain criteria to accept less number of the kids because of the race. It's not acceptable. And Asians have to get more than 450 points actually on their SATs to get accepted comparing to other communities. How can that happen? Well, you know what? A lot of Asian Americans, my parents did the same thing. They came to this country. They want to make sure that you get the best education ever, so you really have to study hard. But when colleges looking at their race and too many Asians are applying it, then we have to cut it. So this is all race basis, and we've been working on that since 1990s, and that's what, we have to get rid of it because everybody has to be accepted by merit. That's what we've been working on it. So it's been a long time, and Asian Americans have been actually discriminated.
Congresswoman Michelle Steele, thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me today.
You might not have heard of the term merchant marine. These were the men who met face-to-face with danger during World War II and were killed at a higher rate than any other military branch. But unfortunately, it took 77 years to garner congressional recognition for their crucial role in the war. Here's their stories.
This small group of men is only a fraction of the hundreds of thousands who served as merchant marines in World War II, a crucial role that was often misunderstood.
We were the suppliers for the military. Without us, they would not have been able to completely win the war the way they did. We were the people who were the backbone of the military.
Charles is 101 years old this year, the eldest among the group. Most of them are around 90 years old. The men here today tell me they're blessed to have made it to the final victory and to lay eyes on this World War II memorial.
And so what you really see is the divisions of all the places we served on 5 continents.
That we finally did it.
But they cherish and remember those, the more than 9,500 who didn't make it.
And these men served in the most dangerous branch with the highest casualty rate of any branch during that war. One veteran tells me that 1 out of every 26 men died in the line of duty, with at least one ship sinking every day.
Well, the most scariest thing was I was in a convoy. Several ships ahead of us got torpedoed, and guys were in the water and you couldn't help them.
Yeah, you never knew when a submarine was going to put a torpedo in you. But fortunately, I didn't suffer that.
While these men faced uncertainty of life during every day of their service, they were unfortunately not met with the same recognition when they made it home.
And that kind of hurt. We come home and everybody else is having a parade, participating in a parade, and we're on the sidelines. We weren't even invited to be in the welcoming home parades. But we live with it.
It took 43 years for the servicemen to get the recognition from the government as veterans. Many of them were as young as 16 years old when they joined.
And what happened, the ships were knocked off so rapidly that they had to keep recruiting. And by the end of 1943, nothing left to recruit, so they reduced the age to 16.
As a sophomore at the age of 19, coming out of the war because I had dropped out of high school.
And how do they feel about the war in Ukraine going on now?
I think it hasn't started yet.
Seems like we're going backwards. We're going backwards in living in this world. I think people need to learn how to get along.
Tomorrow, Congress will officially honor and recognize these men, along with the 1,500 who are still living. The role of a merchant mariner will at last be recognized for the hardship and sacrifice that these men lived through 77 years ago. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Earlier, I talked to psychiatrist Dr. Carol Lieberman to get a better picture of the Buffalo shooting suspect's mental status and the potential causes for the shooting. Dr. Lieberman argued that this case can be seen as one of the first bedroom terrorists. Dr. Carol Lieberman, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Thank you.
Dr. Lieberman, when deciding whether this shooting suspect is in fact mentally sound or fit to stand trial, what types of things will they be looking for?
Well, they'll want to know whether he can understand the charges against him, which at this point are first-degree murder, and also they're thinking about a terrorism charge and a hate crime charge. They haven't quite decided all of the charges, but that when they get their act together, he will be asked to see if he understands all of them, and also whether he's able to help his attorney in his defense. Now, as far as pleading not guilty by reason of insanity, I think that is going to be a harder stretch, because he planned this for months. In fact, it's now known that he went there to that town. He scoped out the supermarket, which Friendly's supermarket, right? Ironically, and other places in the town. This came as a result of his having been immersed in hate propaganda during the lockdown. This is what I think is the most interesting part of this case. He is one of the first that we are recognizing in any case, bedroom terrorists, meaning that during the lockdown, there were lots of people in their bedrooms, all ages, all ethnic backgrounds, all countries, all over the world, really, this is happening. It's happening in England and France and so on. And they have used the time that they were given in lockdown to immerse themselves in this hateful rhetoric online. And if they are directed to hate, towards things that make a case for hate, then they are going to come to believe that. And even besides, hate towards groups, there is just all the violence on the internet, particularly on violent video games. And this is like the typical pattern that we see in mass shooters, whether they're school shooters, radical Islamists, well, not so much with the radical Islamists who are in the Middle East, but people particularly in America who have been for years, this part isn't new, pandemic or no pandemic, people who have been immersing themselves in violent video games have come out and become violent themselves. So there are studies, decades of studies proving that it's not always a mass shooter that comes about, but it is it can be just someone shooting their friend or shooting individual, or especially school shooters who have immersed themselves in violent video games.
Dr. Carol Lieberman, thank you for joining us. The Food and Drug Administration has approved COVID vaccine booster shots for children ages 5 to 11 years old. In a statement by the FDA, the agency's commissioner, Robert Califf, said that the Omicron wave has seen more kids getting sick and being hospitalized, and that children may also experience longer-term effects, even following initially mild disease. The statement said that the additional shot is intended to provide continued protection against COVID-19. The approved booster is 10 micrograms of the Pfizer vaccine. The dose is the same as the primary series for children between the ages of 5 and 11 and 1/3 of the adult dose. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet urged Europe to take a wary and united approach to checking China and its business practices.
We have a common interest in incentivizing China to refrain from economic practices that have disadvantaged all of us. These practices range from those affecting trade and investment to development and climate policies, to approaches to provide debt relief to countries facing unsustainable debt burdens.
Yellen said that in a speech delivered to the Brussels Economic Forum. On Wednesday, she will travel to Bonn, Germany, to attend the G7 finance ministers' meetings.